Alright guys, the international break is over and we are back for our championship score predictions. We've got 11 games coming up this weekend in the championship. We've also got one coming up in midweek next week, which will be factored into this prediction video as Preston are in FA Cup action against Aston Villa. But North End's game against Derby is taking place next Tuesday, so we'll also be predicting that at the end of the video. Make sure to get involved with your score predictions in the comments down below, but without any further ado, let's jump in. And we're kicking off on Friday with an absolute cracker at Bramall Lane between Sheffield United and Coventry. Now, in usual circumstances, I do think it is normally a little bit of an advantage to be playing earlier than your fellow promotion rivals, as you have the chance to put a little bit of pressure on them if you win. However, in this circumstance, I think it's a really tough game, obviously. Sheff United had a really good record at Bramall Lane this season, but Coventry, the way they've been picking up points since the turn of the year, they've been mixing it with the big boys. Obviously, Frank Lampard's side coming off the back of a brilliant result just before the international break, putting 3 goals past Sunderland and beating them 3-0. And the one thing that stands out as maybe a bit of a weakness for Sheffield United this season has been their record against fellow top 6 sides. It's actually been pretty poor this season. So for context, up until this point of the campaign, Sheff United have lost twice against Leeds, they've lost against Burnley, they drew with Coventry in the reverse fixture, they did beat Sunderland but also lost against them in the reverse fixture, and they've drawn twice with West Brom. So out of every game Sheffield United have had with a fellow top 6 side so far this season, they've only beat one of them. Since Frank Lampard's come in at Coventry, they have been one of the best creative teams in the league, creating numerous chances per game. And for as good as the Blades have been defensively this season, I can see Coventry nicking a goal in this one. Score prediction for me, I'm going to kick this weekend off with a draw. 1-1 I'm saying between those two. I think it'll be close. Next up, and to a big game at the bottom of the championship, we're going to Hull up against Luton. Hull could really put some breathing space between themselves and the bottom 3 with all 3 points in this one. But a win for Luton would be absolutely massive to their survival hopes. Now, perhaps the international break came at a bit of a bad time for Luton, who had been gathering a little bit of momentum prior to this break. Obviously, they had that good win away from home against Cardiff, and generally speaking, Luton have been really poor travellers so far this season. Then they had that goalless draw with Borough where really they should have got all 3 points with the amount of chances they crafted out. Having said that, this one won't be easy against a Hull team who have been really resilient of late, aren't dropping that many points right now. For the majority of this season, home form's been a real issue for Hull, but they have rectified that with back-to-back home wins of late. It feels tight, cagey, maybe a little bit low scoring. I'm just favouring Hull in that head-to-head showdown here. I'm going to go 1-0 Hull in that game. I just think Luton could be maybe a little bit wasteful in the final third, and Hull may be more likely to take their chances. After that, we go to Vicarage Road for Watford up against Plymouth. From a Plymouth perspective, they're currently 6 points adrift with 8 games to go, but if they lose this one and results go against them, that could climb to 9 points adrift of safety, which I think everyone would agree would be too much to turn around with the limited games we've got left. Watford, their form has been quite spotty of late. Obviously, the loss just before the international break against Oxford did really hammer their top 6 hopes. They're still not completely out of it, and I do think most people will probably have this one down as a home win, and that is how I'm sort of seeing it. Now, the reverse fixture between these two was an absolute cracker. I think it was Andre Gray who scored a last-minute equaliser for Plymouth in a 2-2 draw. Not sure I can see the same happening this time. Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-0 Watford in that game. After that, we go to Turf Moor for a really interesting clash for Burnley up against Bristol City. Now, Burnley could sense a bit of an opportunity to pounce if Sheffield United do drop points on that Friday night game against Coventry, but playing Bristol City right now definitely isn't the easiest of games in the world. They've only lost 2 of their last 16 matches and have put themselves in a really good position to attack the top 6 in these final 8 matches. Now, Burnley still unbeaten at Turf Moor, although with that being said, around 50% of their home matches this season have actually finished as draws, and Bristol City themselves have been quite draw heavy on the road this season, so wouldn't be that surprised if this one ends level. 1 goal either way, could see it. Score prediction for me though, I can see a draw with that one. I'm going for a 1-1, you know. Think it could be a weekend where a couple of the top 2 drop points maybe. Next up we go to Cardiff up against Sheffield Wednesday. I'm not quite sure where this Sheffield Wednesday squad is going to be at coming out of this international break. Obviously they've had to sit on that Steel City Derby defeat for a couple of weeks now. Their playoff hopes aren't quite done and dusted, but they're 6 points adrift of the top 6 with 8 games to go. It would take one hell of a run for them to get into the top 6 from this point onwards, and if that is unattainable within a few matches, maybe we start to see a few sides in that region of the table starting to head towards the beach. From a Cardiff perspective, points absolutely still needed on the board. They're just about keeping their head above water right now, but with Derby just behind them and them on a fantastic run of form right now, it really feels like, especially these sorts of matches at home, you have to take advantage of. Sheffield Wednesday are no complete mugs though. The reverse fixture between these two earlier in the season at Hillsborough did end level, and I'm thinking I see another draw in this one, you know. Score prediction, I'm going to go for a 1-1 between those two. After that, we go to Ellen Road for Leeds up against Swansea. Now, this weekend does seem like a real opportunity for Leeds to properly establish themselves as the #1 team in the Championship. I do think there is a decent chance that at least one of Sheffield United or Burnley could drop points. Both of them have got massive banana skin fixtures against the likes of Coventry and Bristol City. I'm certainly not, you know, undermining Swansea, but on paper, Leeds definitely have the easiest fixture out of those 3 sides going for automatic promotion this weekend. Swansea have never really been the biggest scorers on the road all season. I mean, in their last 6 away matches, Swansea have only hit the back of the net 3 times. You compare that to how many goals Leeds are currently scoring in home games especially. It does feel like most of the indicators in this one do point towards a Leeds 3 points. And listen, it would be absolutely typical of the Championship if both Sheff United and Burnley were to come through their tough fixtures and Leeds slip up in this game. You know, we have seen maybe a few examples recently of a little bit of that pressure maybe getting to Leeds, but this sort of game right now, I feel like does suit them against a Swansea side who, like I say, aren't scoring that many goals. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 3-0 Leeds in that game. Fancy them for a bit of a statement win. Next up we go to the Riverside for Middlesbrough up against Oxford. Borough have been fairly decent value for money in their home fixtures recently. They have won back-to-back home matches, and you compare that to Oxford, who are winless in their last 8 games on the road. Most people will probably be fancying a Middlesbrough 3-pointer in this one, but you always have a sneaky feeling with Borough that they don't always tend to turn up in these sorts of matches, and obviously Oxford got a brilliant result just before the international break beating Watford, but it is the sort of match where I would fancy Middlesbrough to create quite a few chances, and if their forwards can be on it, you'd expect them to tuck away 1 or 2 goals. I mean, even thinking about the reverse fixture between these two earlier in the season, it was one of the best attacking performances we've seen from a Championship side this season. Middlesbrough put 6 goals past Oxford when they met earlier. I don't quite think we're going to get a scoreline of that magnitude this time, but I am going to fancy a Borough 3-pointer. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 2-0 Middlesbrough in that game. After that, we go to Carrow Road for Norwich up against West Brom. What's the mentality like of that Norwich group coming out of this international break? I'm not so sure. West Brom, obviously, still in a very good position to finish in the top 6 come the end of the season. If anything's going to cost them a place in the top 6, maybe it's going to be their away form. Now, in fairness to the Baggies, they have gone to quite a few tough grounds recently, and they've come away with a point. You know, they've drawn away recently with the likes of Millwall, Leeds and Burnley. All 3 of those stadiums quite tough places to go to, but consistently away from home has been a bit of an issue for West Brom all season. They've not won away in the Championship since the middle of November. From their 19 Championship away matches so far this season, West Brom have only won 4 of them, so that has been a bit of a weakness this season, and for as inconsistent as Norwich have been recently, they've still got quite a few goals in that side, haven't they? Does feel like it is quite West Brom to draw this sort of match. Score prediction for me, I'm going to fancy a few goals, but I'm going to go for a 2-2 between them. After that, we go to Portsmouth up against Blackburn, a really big game at both ends of the Championship. Portsmouth still in danger of being dragged into this relegation scrap, especially with a couple of their recent results, obviously losing at home against Plymouth, which was the shocker, and then just before the international break, they lost that game against Preston as well. Worth flagging up for Pompey, they do have a couple of tough fixtures on the horizon. After this game against Blackburn, they've got back-to-back away matches against Millwall and Coventry, and I wouldn't be totally surprised if both of those maybe were losses, which does sort of magnify the importance on this sort of fixture. Now, going off the form book, this does look to be a decent time to be playing Blackburn. They've lost 4 out of their last 5 matches, but are still in the top 6 race. It really feels like this has to be a game where Blackburn start to turn around their fortunes. Obviously, Valérien Ismaël hasn't had the new manager bounce going in there at Ewood Park. He'll have had a bit of time to work with the players over this international break. Maybe that's helped them out, I'm not sure. But Portsmouth's record at Fratton Park has just been so strong this season. It really feels like that'll be the driving factor that keeps them up this season. And despite them dropping the ball on a few occasions recently, I think I am fancying a home win in this game. Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-1 Portsmouth. Next up, we go to Stoke up against QPR. Very big game, especially for Stoke right now. They've got Derby breathing down their necks, but obviously Derby won't be in action this weekend. They'll have to wait until Wednesday. So Stoke do have a bit of a chance here to put a bit of breathing space between themselves and the bottom 3. For QPR, they're not mathematically safe right now, but probably one more win, a couple of draws will see them to safety. I can't see them being dragged into this relegation scrap. It has been a bit of a bad run of form for Marty Cifuentes' side recently, but I see a couple wins on the horizon. And for QPR, actually, they could end up having quite the saying who does get relegated. Their next 3 games especially are really quite interesting. QPR play Stoke, Cardiff and Oxford as their next 3. So if QPR are properly up for it and ready to fire after this international break, then they could compile a little bit of misery on the sides below them. From a Stoke perspective, last time out before the international break, they had that 1-0 loss against Millwall, an absolute sickener with that last-minute penalty. QPR had that really good start against Leeds, but just couldn't quite hold out. That finished 2-2. Feels like this game will be quite low margin. Score prediction, I think I'm fancying a draw. I've gone for a few draws this weekend, but another one here. 1-1 for me, I'm saying between those two. After that, to the Stadium of Light for Sunderland up against Millwall. Sunderland still in this weird state between now and the end of the season where they know it's going to be the playoffs come the end of the campaign. They just got to try and gather a bit of momentum in these last 8 matches because performances recently haven't been amazing. There have been a few extenuating circumstances as to why that's maybe been the case. Certainly the defensive injuries are piling up for the Black Cats at the moment. I think Trey Hume, another one who could be on the sidelines after he was forced to pull out of international duty. I think that's now Hume and Dennis Serkin who will be sidelined. So missing your 2 starting fullbacks is a massive blow. You add Dan Ballard, who's out as well, into that as well, and that back line is suddenly starting to look a little bit shaky. Especially in this sort of fixture against a side like Millwall, Alex Neil will have his men fired up for this one. Alex Neil returning to the Stadium of Light, of course. I do always have a memory of Alex Neil going back to Sunderland. I think it was during his first season with Stoke, and Stoke beat Sunderland 5-1 away from home or something like that. Not sure I can see a bonkers result like that, but there could be a bit of an upset on the cards here. Sunderland have only lost once at home all season though, and there is still a lot of quality in that side, isn't there? But why not? I feel like we could get a few upsets this weekend. Score prediction there, I'm going to go 2-1 Millwall on the road. And then to round off this batch of games, we're going to the Wednesday night fixture between Derby and Preston. Now, this game was originally supposed to take place over the weekend, but obviously with Preston making it to the FA Cup quarterfinals, it has had to be postponed. From a Preston perspective, it does feel like a lot of our energies and efforts will be going into that Villa fixture on Sunday, and I mean, depending on how far that game goes, you know, it could go into extra time and things like that. Physically, that game's definitely going to take a lot out of us, and with the amount of injuries that we have at the moment as well, it does feel like this is the sort of fixture that Derby can look to take advantage of. They'll have obviously had the extra rest, on a really good run of form right now, having won their last 3 championship matches, and generally speaking, from a North End point of view right now, there's not a great deal to play for in these final 8 matches, is there? Score prediction, reluctantly, I'm going to go 1-0 Derby in that game. I just feel like the North End boys could be a little bit shattered from the weekend. But there you guys have it. Those are my championship score predictions. What are yours? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Other than that though, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like, and I'll see you all in the next one.